Hello, and welcome to the Peace, Mind, and Body Yoga Challenge. So this week we are going over a level 1 Vinyasa class. Yesterday we went over a half Sun Salutation. So today we will refresh on this half Sun Salutation and do a full Sun Salutation A. We will go ahead and get started standing at the top of our mats in mountain pose. Making sure that you're standing tall. You can have the heels of your feet and your big toes touching, or you can have your feet hip distance apart. Both hands out by your side, palms facing up, pulling your shoulders back. Head should be centered, gaze slightly lowered or closed, and making sure you're rotating your tailbone slightly down to take away the arch in your lower back. Once you get in a comfortable position, start to focus on your breathing, allowing your mind to be still. To be in this current moment, taking a few deep inhales in through the nose and exhaling out through the nose. Trying to calm your mind so that you can connect to this current moment. Breathing in life and exhaling anything that you do not want with you. Sweeping your arms up overhead into an upward salute, palms facing each other, rotating your pinkies inward, pulling your shoulders down and out of your ears. Taking your right hand and grabbing your left wrist. On an inhale, slightly pull at your left wrist. Then on an exhale, slowly bend your body down to the right side, creating a stretch in the outer left body, making sure you're keeping your shoulders rotated outward. Taking your left hand and grabbing your right wrist. On an inhale, slightly pull at the wrist. And on an exhale, slightly bend to the left side, creating a stretch in the right outer body, making sure you're rotating your shoulders back. And on an inhale, inhaling back up to center and exhaling down to a slight back bend. Inhaling back up to center. On an exhale, sweeping your arms down and lowering your torso, maintaining a flat back as you lower down into a forward fold. Making sure that you're letting your head hang heavy. Inhaling up to a half lift. Placing your hands either on your shin, above your knee on your thighs, or letting them hang in front of you. Lifting your torso up, creating a 7 shape with your body. Head should be parallel to the ground, pulling your shoulders back and pulling your tailbone into the opposite direction. And on an exhale, forward fold. Going through this movement again, but allowing less time in between the movements. Inhaling up to an upward salute, sweeping your arms up overhead, taking the right hand and grasping the left wrist, and on an exhale, bending over to the side. Then on an inhale, inhaling up to center, releasing the hands, taking the left hand and grabbing the right wrist, exhaling down to the left side, inhaling back up to center, Exhaling to a slight back bend with cactus arms. Inhaling back up to center. Exhale, forward fold. Inhaling up to a half lift, placing your hands on your shins or your thighs. Then exhale, forward fold. So we will go ahead and go through this movement, 1 breath per movement. Inhaling your arms up overhead to an upward salute. Grasping the left wrist, bending to a side bend. Inhaling up to center, switching your hands. Then exhaling, bending to the left side. Inhaling back up to center. Exhale to a slight back bend. Inhaling back up to center. Exhaling, forward fold. Then inhaling to a half lift. And exhale, plant your hands onto the mat and bring your legs back into a high plank position. Dropping your knees down to the mat into a modified plank. As you exhale, start to lower down to the mat, making sure that your elbows are glued to your rib cage as you lower all the way down to the mat. Keeping your hands where they are. And inhaling your chest up off the mat into a baby cobra, contracting all the back muscles. Exhale, lower down to the mat. Inhaling back up to another baby cobra, but taking your hands and your feet off the mat, contracting your back muscles. On an exhale, lower down to the mat. Then on an inhale, press into your hands, lifting your upper body off the mat and straightening your arms completely into a full cobra. Pulling your shoulders back, letting your hips sink down into the mat. On an exhale, press into your hands and push your hips up, back into a downward facing dog. Making sure your arms are straight. You're pressing your hips up and back towards the wall, creating an upside down V shape with your body, letting your head hang heavy, looking between your legs to see if you can see your ankles, and if you can, rotating your thighs inward to rotate out your heels. On an inhale, lower your knees down to the mat, creating a tabletop position. And on an exhale, lower down into a child's pose, keeping your knees width distance of the mat. Bring your big toes together and pressing your hips down to your heels, lowering your torso down to the mat, extending your arms straight out in front of you, placing your forehead flat on the mat. Child's pose is a resting pose. Anytime throughout the sequence, if you need to catch your breath, this is your resting pose. It allows your body to calm down. You're in that moment of stillness. On an inhale, press into your hands, pressing your hips up into a downward facing dog. Making sure you release your head, pressing your hips up and back towards the wall. Creating that upside down V shape with your body, arms fully extended, and making sure you're breathing. On an inhale, sweep your right foot up behind you, making sure your toes are pointed down, hips are squared. And on an exhale, step your foot in between both hands, dropping your left leg down to the mat, extending your foot so that the top of your foot is flat, Sweeping your arms up overhead into a crescent B. Making sure that your right knee is at a 90-degree angle. Your knee should be over your ankle. If you need a little assistance with your balance, you can grab your props and place your hands on top of the prop, making sure to not dip all your weight into the prop. They are used only for assistance. Making sure you're breathing. On an inhale, straighten your right leg to a half split, making sure your toes are pointed to the ceiling and slightly press your hips back. Lowering your upper body and your head, if possible, creating a deep stretch in the hamstring. If you need to use your props, you can place your hands on your props to provide some extra support. Then on an inhale, placing a bend back into your right leg. On an inhale, sweep your left arm up overhead into a revolved crescent B, making sure your palm is facing your back foot, your hand is lifting up and then taking a slight bend backwards, creating a stretch in the left side body. Making sure you're breathing. Your right hand could be either on your side on a block, hanging behind you, or placing the right hand on your left thigh. And on an exhale, cartwheel your arms back down onto the mat, then bringing your right leg to meet the left. Slowly lowering down your upper body, making sure that your elbows are riding your ribs. Inhaling and pressing up into a cobra. And on the exhale, untuck your toes and pressing your hips back to a downward facing dog. Combining these three poses is called Vinyasa. Inhaling, your left leg behind you, toes pointed down, hips are squared. Exhale, planting your left foot in between your hands, dropping your right knee down to the mat, placing the top of your foot flat on the mat. Inhaling your arms up overhead to a crescent B, making sure your left knee is over your right ankle, pulling your shoulders down your spine, feeling the stretch in the right groin outer hip area. On an exhale, straighten the left leg into a half split, making sure your toes are pointed to the ceiling, pulling your hips slightly back, letting your upper body fall forward, creating a deep stretch in the left hamstring. Making sure you're breathing, letting your head hang heavy, placing a bend back into your left knee, inhaling your left arm up overhead into a revolved crescent B, making sure you're lifting up and then bending slightly back a little bit to get a stretch in the right side body. On an exhale, cartwheel your arms down to the mat, taking your left foot back to meet the right. If you would like a little challenge, you can stay in a high plank and slightly lean forward and lower down to your chaturanga and continue with your Vinyasa Flow. Doing the same movement, but with a little less rest in between. On an inhale, taking your right leg and sweeping it behind you. On an exhale, placing your right foot in between your hands. Inhaling, arms up into a crescent B, making sure your knee is over your ankle. On an exhale, straighten the front leg into a half split, making sure the toes are pointed up. On an inhale, placing a bend in the front knee, sweeping your left arm up overhead to revolved crescent B, making sure you're lifting before bending, and exhaling, cartwheeling your arms back down to the mat, Vinyasa. Lowering down to Chaturanga, inhaling to Cobra, exhaling to Downward Facing Dog. Giving yourself a moment to slow down your breathing. On an inhale, sweeping your left leg up behind you, toes pointed down. Exhaling, planting it in between your hands, dropping your back leg, inhaling your arms up to a crescent B, making sure your left knee is over your ankle. On an exhale, straightening the left leg into a half split, making sure your toes are pointed to the sky. On an inhale, sweeping your right arm up overhead into revolve crescent B, making sure you're extending up before reaching back. And on an exhale, cartwheel your arms down to the mat, taking your left leg to meet the right, going into your Vinyasa Flow. Meeting down in a downward facing dog. We will do 1 breath per movement. Take a few deep inhales and exhales, allowing the breath to slow down your breathing. And on an inhale, bringing your right leg up behind you, toes pointed down. Exhaling, planting it between your hands, inhaling up to a crescent A. Exhaling down to a half split. Inhaling your left arm up to a revolved crescent B. Exhale and cartwheel your arms down to the mat, bringing your right leg to meet the left. Vinyasa. Exhale to Chaturanga. Inhale to Cobra. Exhale to Downward Facing Dog. Inhaling your left leg behind you, placing it on the mat. Inhaling, arms up to Crescent B. Exhaling down to a half split. Inhaling, sweeping the right arm up to reverse Crescent B. Exhale, cartwheel your arms down to the mat, taking your left leg to meet the right, Vinyasa. Exhale, Chaturanga. Inhale to Cobra. Exhale to Downward Facing Dog. Inhaling your knees down to the mat. Exhaling down into a child's pose. Take a deep breath in through the nose and exhale out through the mouth. Allowing your body to be still. Start to slow it down, your breathing, calming the body down from the constant movement. Channeling your energy back into this space of stillness. The light in me sees the light in you. Namaste.